Hello, I'm Carl Euland Helverson, and you're watching Living Green on a Blue Planet. This is a program that focuses on the environment, and both this Access TV channel, as well as YouTube by the same name, Living Green on a Blue Planet, and Carl's Green blog, all have a focus on Indigenous peoples. And it's not because they are being idolized or romanticized, because that would be condescending, but rather because before colonization there were thousands and thousands and thousands of years of land management that differed from locale to locale. So what you farmed, how you treated the land, what you ate, your diet would be different from the desert, the coast, the mountains, the rainforest, and in this area, northeast Indiana, from an area that was forest, wetlands, elk, and bison, all which are sadly, for the most part, gone as a reaction to the development of settlers. And so today we're going to listen to Nelson Ross Walker, who's a local historian, and he's going to be talking about this clash of cultures of when the European and American settlers moved into this area and came in direct conflict with the Northwest Native American Confederacy. It was a time of particular arrogance from some of the American leaders. The other side, the indigenous side, the Confederacy, had a number of prominent leaders. And so Northeast Indiana has folks who are foundational to our history. We have Chief Matea and Chief Little Turtle and Chief Blue Jacket and the Prophet at Tecumseh, just so many. Okay, so we're going to first hear Nelson Ross Walker talk about these battles that went very poorly for the Americans in the beginning, and then later on we'll talk about the waterways, which were so important in this area of the country. One of the things that is clear is that the cultures could not be more different. That instead of in industry, what you had was living off the land, living with the land, in harmony with the land. And so the calendar of the Miami reflected the seasons, and the behaviors of the people reflected the seasons. And the food was the elk and the bison and the fish and the plants. And so what we would call foraging, they would find supplemental to a diet. Plants were used for fibers, for weaving, and this was all being lost for farming that would eventually be monospecies farming, erosion, the eradication of important animals, beaver, bison, elk.
This is the Northwestern Confederacy history, the local portion. Again, my name is Nelson Ross Miller. I'm the president and executive producer at Olive Branch. of Cherokee, Iroquois, Delaware, Miami, Ottawa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Shawnee, Wabash Confederacy, and Wyandotte. It was formed in 1783. Battles we will look at is Le Balme's defeat, the campaign of General Harmar, and the Battle of the Wabash. Le Balme's defeat, which is a highly speculated battle, there's conflicting reports from Americans and natives of what actually went on. It was said that this was sanctioned by the U.S. Congress during the Revolution, but there's actually no record of that being sanctioned. So Le Balme was a colonel in the United States Army during the time. It happened the 5th of November in 1780, located at Eel River in Churubusco, Indiana. It was more of an engagement than a battle. Le Balme and his men fortified themselves on the banks of the Eel River, but were only able to fire one volley before being overwhelmed. Colonel Le Balme was also accompanied by the Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette soon later would be Washington's most trusted advisor from France. And he actually was one of the ones responsible for garnering a French alliance with France during the Revolution. Le Balme was defeated by Little Turtle and suffered 40 casualties, including himself. He did die there. While Little Turtle only suffered 5. This was Little Turtle's first battle. This is the location off of Le Balme Road in Churubusco. Okay, so the campaign of General Harmar, Josiah Harmar, was a brigadier general in the United States Army. He was tasked with driving the Indians out of what was known as Kikianga. This was due to the local natives not being accepting of the United States basically declaring this land as theirs. So the natives did not recognize the United States authority to be in charge of these lands. So their policy was to raid and drive people out of their land. And that's what they did. And so that's what led to the response by Harmar, which was actually sanctioned by Congress and by Washington. Harmar's force consisted of 1,400 regular and militia soldiers. When the army reached the village of Kikianga, it found that it had been burned and abandoned by the Miami themselves. So Colonel Hardin's defeat was in 1790, October 19th. Hardin's force consisted of 180 militiamen and regulars. Most of the militiamen fled the battle without firing a single shot. Most of these were people that didn't even fire a gun before, and they put them right into battle with the natives. They set up a brief but futile resistance. It was very brief. Most of these small battles only lasted maybe upwards of 2 hours. Some of the retreating militiamen did not stop retreating until they crossed the Ohio River into Kentucky. So from Fort Wayne all the way into Kentucky. There's the location of that. Hardin's defeat is right across from Eel River Church, and it's not too far from Carroll High School. Kikianga was another engagement or battle. Harmar sent an attack force. This is basically the retaliation from what just had happened. Back to Kikianga after hearing about the natives' return to the village. He took 2 companies with him, positioned them along the west bank of the St. Joseph River, and 3 companies advanced across and forward the Maumee River, hoping to trap the Indians. However, the Miami warriors challenged the attack and successfully repelled the attempted evasion. It was a complete bloodbath again. Most of these men were not prepared for what was coming to them, and as a result, it really did not work out for the United States during this entire situation with Colonel Hardin and General Harmar. So next we'll move on to what would be the now commander-in-chief after the revolution was over. St. Clair took position as commander-in-chief after Washington. St. Clair was actually one of the first presidents of the United States before the actual United States was formed. It was just called the President of the Congress during the Revolution. He had an unsuccessful defense of Fort Ticonderoga, which led to a court-martial. He was never offered a command again during the Revolution, but served as aide-de-camp to Washington, meaning he was basically Washington's personal aide. He was negligent and arrogant during his campaign against the Northwestern Confederacy. You will see a pattern in all of these leaders in which they completely ignore the enemy's strategy. They even completely ignore scout reports to where they just completely dismiss scout reports. So the Battle of the Wabash took place on 11/4/1791. It was fought by the Northwestern Confederacy, which you can see right there. That's the map. Versus the newly formed United States of America. The United States of America did declare war on the Native Americans at this point. Chief Little Turtle and Chief Blue Jacket was Shawnee, led the attack. Chief Little Turtle was Miami. Major General Arthur St. Clair is commander of the defending army. 1,100 Northwestern Confederacy troops versus 1,400 United States Army troops. This is the beginning of the Battle of the Wabash. In green there, that is the Native Americans. So if you can see here, they completely almost surrounded them. Like I said before, they were ignoring scout reports. Arthur St. Clair said these guys were out on a hunting mission. 1,100 troops were out on a hunting mission. That completely dismissed it. So at 12 o'clock noon, when all the soldiers had their guns down, eating chow, the Native Americans decide to encircle, as you see around there, and attack the hill they were on. This isn't a fort, this is just a hill. This is their encampment. So here is the defense of our United States troops and militia, and here's the attempt to break out of the they were surrounded by the enemy. Started at 7:15 a.m. Lieutenant Colonel Dark led 3 companies and 2 companies in a sweeping motion. So they sweep out like this, out like that. Designed to turn the right flank of the Confederacy. Artillery was aimed too high and was useless at this point. During this point, artillerymen were engaging in hand-to-hand combat. Not one of them survived from the artillery that day. Major General Richard Butler was one of the 4 generals killed in the Native Wars. So the next motion was the left and the right wings of the Native formation flanked and completely encircled the camp within 30 minutes. Again, they're green right there. And so they're continuing to try to get out of being surrounded. After 3 hours of fighting, St. Clair decided to retreat and leave the supplies and the wounded behind. In the retreat, Little Turtle allowed breakout bayonet charge to pass. Through the lines, Major Clark of the rear guard was wounded, and his company abandoned the defenses of the rear guard, turning the retreat into what is known as a rout. A rout is when everybody is for themselves. They threw their muskets away, they threw their munition out, and they just ran. So when you do that, as you can see, all these men, the Native American troops, just pushed on through and just slaughtered as many people as they possibly could at that point, because they gave up the defense of the rear guard. So in strategy, you never want to get flanked, and that's what it is. After the retreat, a private that was hiding beneath a tree recalled that the natives returned to the camp, killed the wounded, and looted the camp. The survivors were able to retreat to Fort Jefferson. The aftermath, following the Battle of the Wabash, resulted in the greatest victory over the United States for Native Americans. 25% of all American ground forces were defeated in the Battle of the Wabash. St. Clair asked for a court-martial to exonerate himself, but Washington denied the request and accepted St. Clair's resignation. Later on in Washington's journals, Washington wrote that nobody else had the authority to court-martial St. Clair because nobody else in the army currently at that time was of equal rank, because he was the commander-in-chief at that time. In 1792, the House of Representatives launched the first ever congressional investigation in the nation's history into St. Clair's defeat. Even though the committee's report was lost somehow, it did gain support from all 3 branches of government and solidified the notion that Congress has the rights to investigate any action taken by the federal government. Historians such as Allen D. Gaff refer to this as the first precedent set by Congress to not hold anyone accountable after a massive investigation has been launched into a politician's action. So St. Clair was not just a commander-in-chief. He was a politician too. He was the governor of the Northwestern Territory. Our notion that Congress has the right to investigate actions taken by the federal government. Historians such as Allen D. Gaff refer to this as the precedent set by Congress not to hold anyone accountable after a mass investigation into the federal government has been concluded.
Turtle Island, or North America, was not easy to navigate. And one of the ways that people did navigate, whether you were indigenous or a French trapper or a settler, was the waterways. And so you could go from the East Coast to the Great Lakes. And in this area, you could go to the Maumee, the St. Joseph Watershed, Summit City, Fort Wayne, Little River to Wabash River to the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico. So these waterways became important for industry, especially before the railroad, and they were the sites of clashes as well. It's hard to go on Northeast Indiana and not stop at the Seven Pillars and see this area that was a gathering place, not just of the Miami, but of different First Nation peoples from around Turtle Island. The pillars still stand. They're smaller from natural erosion, but it certainly is a sign that these waterways play an important part in both the lives of the indigenous people and the lives of the settlers that came after them.
Waterway travel history feeds into Eel River, Spring Creek, and we're going to talk about one person that is seriously underrepresented in history today. So this is where he would have went down to trade with the Indians. His name is George Grogan. He reached present-day South Whitley in 1765. He was the deputy superintendent of Northern Indian Affairs for 16 years, from 1756 to 1772. He gained allegiance of the area Indians from the French and negotiated the Treaty of Lancaster in 1748 with the Miami and the Treaty of Logstown in 1752 with the Delaware, Shawnee, Iroquois, and Wyandot. He negotiated an end to Pontiac's War in 1763 through 64 and succeeding in concluding a settlement with the rebellious Ottawa chief in 1765. Let's see what else we got about him. So when he came through here, he would trade with the Indians all over. I think I have a map here somewhere here. All right. He would have went up through here. As you can realize, a lot of these rivers feed into lakes and areas of water masses. Native Americans would settle around water masses, and they would, move around from place to place. So they might not settle there for a whole year. They might just be there for a month or 3. One of the things about this river is it feeds up to Eel River, which comes almost all the way to Fort Wayne. So it is possible that he traded all over the place here. And he did go up to the Michigan tribes as well. That's it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.